Hey up YouTube, what's going on? Welcome to another review, and this time it's for the big one. Star Wars Rogue One is out, and therefore I am now reviewing it. So, just to get a thing out of the way first, I did plan to get this done a little bit earlier, but it's got a little bit delayed, which is, it's only a bit unfortunate, but it is what it is. And for exactly the same reason as I did plan to do both a non-spoiler and a spoiler review separate, just so you could watch them both separate, but a little bit pressed for time, obviously, at this point of the year. It's, Christmas is only like 2 days away as I'm recording this, so there is that. However, without further ado, we'll get into it. There is going to be a non-spoiler and a spoiler part of this. I will make it clear when the spoilers are about to happen, just so obviously you guys don't get spoiled. Just so you know, I'm going to turn off here. If you haven't watched it yet, just turn it off when I start doing the announcement that spoilers are about to happen, and then maybe join me back once you have seen the film at a later date. The bit at the end, I also do a bit of a summary at the end, which will be spoiler free as well. So I'll try and keep it clear where those points are. I'll try and keep a timestamp down below. I can't remember how successful I've been with that in the past, so we'll see how it goes. But I'll make it clear, non-spoiler, spoiler. Now, at this point, I will say that I have seen Rogue One twice already, and I saw it both times in IMAX, which is a fantastic format to be watching this in. The picture and the sound, the 3D is all incredible. Well, I'm not gonna lie, the 3D isn't really utilised as 3D, which, sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. In sort of the aspect of it obviously being Star Wars in space, a little bit more 3D usage would be nice, to be honest. I didn't really notice it too much as being properly utilised, something like certain shots to properly utilise that 3D aspect of the IMAX. And just in general. So I would say if you're torn between normal 2D and normal 3D, I would just watch the normal 2D one, because there's not really a lot of 3D there for you, in my opinion anyway. Like I said, I've seen it twice and I can't really remember any sort of standout moments of, oh my god, you need to see this in 3D. But it's nice to have, it's just general sort of, like I say, sort of atmospheric 3D, if that makes sense. Just bringing the people in the foreground to the foreground, the people in the background to the background, and that kind of thing. Just no sort of specific 3D coming towards you, big dynamic shots, that kind of thing. Which is kind of weird for Star Wars. I mean, there's only one I can think of that happens pretty much right at the beginning of the film as well. So, and that's kind of rare for sort of space set 3D films. Is you can only really think of one moment where 3D is properly utilised. So yeah, that's about it on that front, on just the 3D things. Obviously the graphics are gorgeous. There's obviously certain big talking point with CGI wise, but I'm not going to go into that in this part of this review. That will definitely be in the spoiler part of things. If you haven't seen the film, you know what I'm talking about already, probably. But obviously the CGI, the prop work, they've done the sort of the seamless blend of those two aspects, much like the Force Awakens. There obviously, when Force Awakens came out, in the run-up to Force Awakens, there was obviously going to be a lot of, is it going to rely too much on CGI? Is it going to go use the traditional things? And obviously everyone was very pleased with how Force Awakens turned out on that front. We were all very happy that how they relied on a lot of practical effects rather than the CGI. And then when they did use the CGI, it wasn't obviously CGI necessarily. I will say there is one moment in this film where you can tell it's obviously a prop rather than 3D CGI, and I kind of like that, to be honest. I kind of like it. It's just one moment. It's not throughout or anything like that. It's just one moment where it's just obviously a prop, and again, it's fairly early on as well. And I kind of like the fact that it was obviously a prop. They kind of didn't really polish that off with CGI, and there's a certain charm to just leaving that as it was, making it feel like it fits perfectly just before the originals in that way. Because, to be honest, obviously, with Force Awakens, it was a brand new chapter, so they could get away with more CGI almost. This one had to feel like the original trilogy a lot more than Force Awakens did. Force Awakens had to sort of tie into the original trilogy and the fact that it follows on from it. But from the fact that it was a new sort of trilogy, it allowed a certain bit more, I can't think of the word now, a little bit more leeway in sort of making it a bit fresher, as it were. Whereas this one kind of had to feel with a lot more of the aesthetic of the original trilogy, and it kind of nails it pretty much. It pretty much just nails it. I can't really think of anything jarring that says, whoa, you went a bit too far with CGI. There's no obvious, no kind of thing like that. So yeah, in terms of the design and all that kind of, the design and the feel and the general graphic work on it, it does feel like it belongs with the original trilogy. There's plenty of stuff that ties into the original trilogy and the old and the sort of the prequel trilogy and the TV shows as well, which is pretty nice. So I'll talk again, of course, more about that in the spoiler half of things, just because some of that is spoiler. In terms of the characters and the sort of the acting, there's nothing wrong with any of the acting. All the cast members are brilliant. There's no sort of dud characters, as it were. I would like a little bit more story to one of the characters, a little bit of story to the Bodhi Rook. He's the Imperial pilot that turns at the start of the film. So I would like a little bit more backstories as to why he decided to turn, but I could sort of see why they didn't bother with that, just because it kind of happened with Finn in Force Awakens, that they had another sort of Imperial-esque character who turns and becomes a main character, as it were. Bodhi's obviously not a main character, he's more just a side character. Obviously the main characters are Cassian and Jin, really. And K2SO, who absolutely steals the show. Alan Tudyk there needs to be something written into some kind of law that Alan Tudyk must voice every single character, personal character. Any animated character, they should just voice every film. You should just do all the voices for every film and every animation ever, basically. He's just too good, frankly, for this kind of work. But no, he brings a life to K2SO, and I think that's obviously been one of the shining points of all the Star Wars films is that all the mechanical, the robot, the droid characters, they all feel like they have a personality. They all feel like you have something to connect with them with, or some way of connecting with what are obviously just robots, and that's always been a great plus in the Star Wars universe. People may complain that C-3PO can get a bit annoying, and that's one thing. And R2-D2 obviously is just beeps and noises, and he has a personality. BB-8 just rolls around again, just beeps and noises, and also has a personality, and somehow managed to, get a personality out of that, and that's brilliant, really. And then K2SO, obviously it's Alan Tudyk, he does have a voice in this situation, and I love what they did with K2SO. He probably will end up being the majority of people's favourite characters from this film, which is a little bit unfortunate, maybe to the main two characters, but it is what it is. Baze and Chirrut have a fantastic relationship, they work very well together on screen, so I'm very pleased how that turned out. And obviously Donnie Yen and oh god, I forgot what his name is, that's unfortunate, but they both have a great chemistry with each other, and the characters are just great and unique, and that's the great thing about it, is all the characters do feel unique. There's no sort of overlap or feel like they could have got rid of one character. All the characters that exist in the film feel like they needed to exist. There's no sort of superfluous characters who they probably could have cut, and every single character is needed in the film pretty much. So there's that. Jin is great. Felicity Jones is obviously great. You can't really fault Felicity Jones in pretty much any of her performances ever, almost. Nice to get Diego Luna. I knew someone who sort of was very, very pleased and had sort of ties to the Hispanic community, and I knew they were sort of generally very pleased that Diego Luna was going to be in this film, because he's a fairly big name in sort of that. Sort of in films, in sort of Hispanic films and things like that, and there was a lot of buzz about the fact that he was going to be in that community. It's great that they've sort of got all this diverse cast in the film, and it just feels natural. They don't feel like you're just sort of diverse for diversity's sake, and that's always a great thing when it's just he's there because he's good, rather than he's there because he's promoting diversity, and that's great because Diego Luna is fantastic in this film. As I said, Donnie Yen, and god damn it, I've forgotten his name, but I really apologise. Whoever plays Baze Malbus, I've generally forgotten his name, that's really annoying me now. I don't have time to look that up, so that's kind of annoying. But it is what it is. Of course, Riz Ahmed, playing Bodhi Rook, also great. Forrest Whitaker, also great. Like I said, every character feels like they're there for a purpose. The only negative point I feel like I have on sort of not necessarily the cast, but the character front, is I feel like Ben Mendelsohn needed a little bit more to work with. He could have had a little bit more work. I don't know how much was cut out of the film, because I don't know if this is a spoiler or not, but obviously, if you're aware of the sort of backstory in the past few months, there's been sort of apparently quite a few reshoots. Now, it's not immediately obvious if you just watch the film that it's been reshot. It all flows quite nicely. I mean, the start part of it is quite start of it is a little bit clunky, but then it obviously finds its groove and it gets really good. The final third is phenomenal. But apparently it's that sort of end bit that was the bit that got reshot anyway, so it's kind of weird that it's the bit that they reshot that's kind of just perfect. The first part is a little bit clunky, but the end part is just perfect, frankly, in my opinion. And that's the bit apparently they reshot. So you might notice as you go through the film, there's a few shots in the trailers that don't appear in the film. And most notably that one with the TIE Fighter. That's kind of... I was like, oh, where's that gone? And also one of the moments with Ben Mendelsohn's character, Orson Krennic, that's not in the film. It's like, okay. One of his big lines from the trailers is not in the film. And it's, okay. I feel like he could have had slightly more screen time, slightly more presence would have been nice. Just give a little bit more backstory to Krennic. There's a tiny bit of backstory, but I just kind of wanted a little bit more backstory because he doesn't quite feel powerful. You kind of needed to have a little bit more backstory just to make it feel a little bit more powerful, as it were. It just kind of feels like a character on the dark side. It doesn't really feel like he's got a lot of presence, as it were. And it is Ben Mendelsohn, who obviously is a fantastic actor and generally has a lot of presence. And has a very good ability just to sort of own scenes. And it's kind of unfortunate that a lot of the scenes he's in, he's with someone who steals the scene in a different way. Not just because he's an actor, but you know, if you've seen the trailers, and I'm going to include stuff from the trailers in the non-spoiler part of this. But obviously, you know, there's scenes that he shares with Darth Vader, and obviously Darth Vader is Darth Vader, and it's very hard to out-presence Darth Vader in that situation. There's scenes with another character I'm not going to talk about, but in the non-spoiler part of things, just because I want it to be a surprise. Who again, just by the sheer fact he's there, kind of takes the light off Ben Mendelsohn, and Ben Mendelsohn shines most when he's got the spotlight on him and he can just be Ben Mendelsohn, really. So you kind of need a little bit more to work with. I would like a little bit more backstory, because there's a nice backstory between Galen and Krennic as well, which I would like to see a little bit more of. Because it seems like there's a little bit of respect there originally, and then it's kind of, the relationship has changed over the years. And I would like to see a little bit more of that, to be honest. I mean, obviously they could go in more depth with Orson Krennic in future spin-off films, as it were. I would like to see a little bit more Krennic maybe in spin-off films. I'm not sure if he'd appear in like the Han Solo one that's coming up, because that would be set sort of in the same time period in between probably the two. It would be set in between 3 and 4 again. I think Han Solo would probably end up being more 3.25 rather than 3.5 like Rogue One is. So it'd be nearer 3 than 4 I think. I'm not really certain, really, where that would fall in, because it's young Han Solo, and I'm trying to work out roughly what age he'd be. Might end up being around the time of 3, just after 3 ended, that Han Solo film. I'm not sure they've announced what kind of time frame they're working on there. But I'd like to see more Krennic maybe in the future. That would be nice to be able to flesh out his backstory and just sort of learn how he got to where he is. Because he's kind of a very important character in the story and general timeline as well. So it'd be nice to get a bit more story on Krennic. Everything's great. One thing I'll say about Rogue One is it needed to stand out as a spin-off film, and it does that. There's certain artistic quirks that they've gone with, and certain things they've omitted, in fact, as well, that make it obviously like it's not part of the main trilogies of Star Wars, as it were. So there's a few things like that. There's a few little touches, like there's I don't know if I think it's not really a spoiler, but there's no title crawl, and there's no and whenever they go to a new planet, pretty much there's usually like a name tag, so it comes a little bit as an adventure film in that regard, where they put like the place name on the screen when it appears, like the planet names. And that's a little thing that doesn't really exist in the normal trilogy, so it kind of allows it to stand out from the film in that regard, but whilst being an integral part of the main timeline. It's kind of an interesting way it sort of fits in. And the one final thing I think I'll say in the non-spoiler part of this is they got the right man to direct it. Because if you didn't know already, it's Gareth Edwards, who is the guy who did Monsters, I think it's called Monsters with plural, and the recent Godzilla film. And it's exactly the right choice for this film, in my opinion. He absolutely nailed it. Disney absolutely nailed the casting, bringing him in for this, because whilst the Godzilla film might have had a bit of criticism for not having enough Godzilla in it, like some people were, disappointed there wasn't enough Godzilla in it, everyone pretty much agreed that bringing it down to ground level, and having it from the perspective of the people, people involved in this big fight involving Godzilla, and the enemies, of course, in that film. And of course, Monsters follow the same thing. It revolves around the people during an invasion, a monster invasion. So, bringing it down into the people, into this massive big world, big threat, Death Star, Empire, that kind of, bring it down to the people involved in this. And he's got such a great knack of making it so sort of, I can't think of the word, but so personal, as it were, so personal to these specific characters in this greater universe with this grand threat in the Death Star. And the Death Star's presence in this film kind of feels a little bit like the Godzilla. It's always there, lurking in the distance, as it were. And then when it appears, it makes its statement very much, and then sort of disappears again for a large chunk of the film, and then reappears and becomes a big threat again. Kind of that kind of situation. And yeah, the road feel, it very much feels like a war film. And one thing I mentioned to people just having watched it is, attached to the front of this film in Britain at the very least is the Dunkirk trailer, the Christopher Nolan Dunkirk trailer, the first one where it's just like a few shots, and then you have the shot of them all on the boat, and you just hear the plane just coming closer and closer, and then looking up and docking, and just out of that atmospheric first trailer for Dunkirk, and that's the perfect trailer to have attached to this film. Because it kind of sets the scene almost in a way. It's very much a war film. It's all about the soldiers, and I love that how they did this. Obviously, it's obviously got the space elements of the spaceships and the blasters and things like that. But it's very much a war film. There's not a great lot of sci-fi stuff on it. Obviously, the locations are sci-fi. There's costumes that are a little bit sci-fi, and there's the spaceships. But it's very much war. And it is probably the most, despite the fact obviously the entire series is about Star Wars, it's probably very much the most war Star Wars has ever been. And it really, really works. So what I'll say is, just on the nice world thing, part of this is absolutely 100% watch it. Watch it if you're not even watch it if you've kind of watched the first one. I'm not sure how. I mean, you will still love the film. You'll still probably like the film if you've never seen Star Wars. It's probably not the best jumping on point for Star Wars, but it's still a very much good film. And there's people that you want to go, if you like, the majority of people who watch it will have seen Star Wars. But if there's people who you plan to go with who maybe are on the fence about going with you, tell them it is great, because even if they've not seen Star Wars, it's still a fantastic film. But I will say that having seen A New Hope at the very least will help them. There's a lot of tie-ins to New Hope, and it's not going to make or break the film for them, but it will provide a lot of moments for you, like it's those guys, etc, etc, etc. So on that point, this is where we go. Spoilers. Stop now if you don't want to be spoiled for anything. There's a few points I just need to pick up on the spoiler half of these things, and I'm going to start off with essentially just the cameos. There's a fantastic amount of cameos in this film. And they're not just cameos for cameo's sake either, and I absolutely love that. It's just sort of, a few of them are just sort of just there. But one thing I particularly love is how they tied in the Rebels TV show. Now, from the start, Disney have always said that the Clone Wars and the Rebels TV show are canon. So there was never any doubt of that. There's no sort of case of this going, oh cool, they're in this film, it's now canon. They were always canon. But I'm glad they sort of incorporated Rebels into the storyline. And I'm not 100% certain if they actually revealed this properly, but Forrest Whitaker's character originally originated from the Clone Wars animated series. His character is originally from the animated series of Clone Wars, the newer one, not the 2D one. And his character originates there, Saw Gerrera, and then he's also going to appear in Rebels as well. Before, I don't know if he's already appeared in Rebels. I need to catch up on Rebels, frankly. And apparently there's going to be some stuff that ties into the Rogue One in Rebels, the TV show as well. So there's that exists, that's pretty cool. And I love how they tied it in. There's brief moments of there's brief shots of the Ghost, the ship from Rebels in the sort of big battle towards the end. There's also a brief moment where Chopper the droid from Rebels just comes across the screen. There's that bit, and I love that bit. There's also a lovely moment, and I like the fact they went with these guys to tie in with A New Hope. Obviously there's a few big characters that they tie in with A New Hope, in terms of Darth Vader and a couple of others. But there's two guys that appear just very briefly, and they sort of just bump into them, and they, have a bit of a tiff briefly. And it's a couple of guys who you may recognise from the cantina scene in the first Star Wars. And I love the fact they brought these guys into them. And I love the fact they did that. That's fantastic. Of all the characters to bring in, I love the fact they did those two, because you're really not expecting it, and it's kind of just oh, those guys. And obviously there's bigger characters, and this is the point where probably the biggest spoiler is the fact they CGI'd in a character from the original set of trilogies, and I personally think it works. There's a lot of debate on whether or not Tarkin looks obviously CGI. The one thing, my opinion on Tarkin's CGI is the moment he first appears, he's sort of, if obviously you watch this part, if you've already seen it, so you know what I'm talking about, but he faces away. I thought, oh, that's cool. They brought Tarkin in just briefly, whatever, and he's facing away, so they can get away with just CGIing the reflection. They just obviously had a stand-in facing away. I thought, that's cool. They just brought Tarkin in, whatever, that's cool. And then he turns around, and I was like, oh, okay. And yeah, the CGI is obvious that first moment he turns around. Obviously, I'm aware of the fact that sadly, obviously, Peter Cushing is dead. But when he turns around, immediately it's like, okay, that's obviously CGI. It's very obvious that's CGI. But then as the film progresses, every time that he appears, because he appears a lot, I think there's more Tarkin than there is Vader in this film, which is weird considering that character is CGI and Vader is not. But the more each appearance that he appears on, you kind of forget that his CGI is that good. The CGI is that good. You kind of forget that it is CGI the longer that he's on screen. And that's pretty good. Again, sort of the moment at the end with Leia, it's obvious that it's CGI because it's just that moment when it turns out, oh, that's obviously CGI. I imagine there'd be the same situation the longer that she'd been in it. It would have felt less like CGI. But she's then obviously only in for the very briefly at the end to tie immediately into New Hope. And then obviously the final thing to talk about, obviously returning characters, is Darth Vader. Darth Vader isn't in it very much. We kind of expected that, to be honest. But what Vader is in, and I love the fact they tied in Mustafar as well from the third episode. So there's that tie-in from Revenge of the Sith. The fact he kind of stays in his home, as it were, is Mustafar, and I love the fact they did that. It's a great tie-in and interesting. It added an aspect to Darth Vader without introducing any words, any dialogue, just his presence there in his essentially castle, in his chamber, as it were. And I like how they sort of added an aspect to Darth Vader we've never seen before, and just don't really talk about it. It's just there, and that's a great way of doing it. Really, it's show don't tell essentially, and I like the way they did that. But Vader, if anything, in my opinion, the scene with Vader and Mendelsohn, Vader looked less real than Tarkin did. Just the costume. Obviously in the past the costume sort of fit the era. The costume looked a little bit too plasticky, as it were, in that scene in my opinion, but then later on any negative things I had about Vader's presence, obviously his voice is still James Earl Jones and he's still got the physical presence, and then he's still got the menace that he has. He still shows his power in that bit, but then at the end when Vader just runs through that, the shots with Vader towards the end are just incredible. That sequence at the very end with Vader, if you weren't scared of Vader, if you've forgotten to be scared of Vader, that will remind you to never forget to be scared of Vader ever again. There's a reason why he's one of the greatest villains of all time, and that is why. Just a lovely reminder how dangerous Vader is. Just the way that scene was almost choreographed, frankly. It's almost like a dance thing, just where you just crunch through those corridors. And just, I kind of lose words trying to talk about that, just because of how perfect that scene was. But in all honesty, and of course this is obviously a big spoiler, but we're on the spoiler part, so if you're still here, then I don't know what you're doing. I expected someone to survive. I expected someone to survive. I wasn't necessarily expecting one of the main two. I was kind of expecting maybe Bodhi Rook might survive. The pilot, I thought he might be able to just fly off. I kind of expected like Cassian and Jin might get in that situation, like just go without us, that kind of thing. And I thought maybe just Bodhi might survive, maybe Chirrut and Baze might survive, but no, everyone perished. I thought, okay, and I'm in two minds of whether or not I like the fact they did that. I think it's very bold that they made that decision. I think it's very bold they decided to go in that way, and I credit them for doing it. And I like the fact, I do like the fact they did do it. Just the sort of the sentimental part of me, I think, would have liked someone to survive, but I think in time I was like, I can accept the fact that everyone died, and I can even like the fact that everyone died. I just personally maybe would have preferred if someone would have lived, just because I have a sentimental heart, I guess. But when the firstborn goes down, I actually, like I said in the non-spoiler part of this, it's a credit to Alan Tudyk and his ability to make you feel for a robot, just in general with Star Wars. But Alan Tudyk's K2SO's, I think I felt the most when K2SO went down, because it kind of just happened, and it's like, oh, okay, this is happening now. And I think K2SO going down personally had the most impact on me. I think I welled up the most at that one. There was obviously very moving. All the other ones were sort of very moving. Sort of Bodhi just sort of happens, and I like the fact I'm in two minds about. I think Bodhi maybe should have had a bigger exit, but at the same time, I like the fact that maybe just one of the characters sort of just goes like that without any sort of build up to it. And yeah, each of the scenes where they go down, I like the fact they sort of addressed Red 5, because that's the call sign of Luke when he joins in New Hope. I like the fact they sort of addressed the sort of vacancy, as it were. Bit sad for the guy who was Red 5, but yeah, I like how they addressed that, and that's pretty neat tie-in as well. So yeah, I think in terms of the grand scheme of things, and obviously we're going to need this is the summary part of this review, but in the grand scheme of things, I personally, in my opinion, would place Rogue One directly behind A New Hope in my list. That's obviously Empire number 1, A New Hope number 2. I would genuinely put Rogue One number 3 directly behind A New Hope. Literally just behind, not much in it. Force Awakens is now 4 for me as well. So, if you want to know the rest of the thing, I actually put Revenge of the Sith ahead of Return of the Jedi. I am a little bit of a heretic in that regard, but I have a soft spot for Revenge of the Sith. And then obviously 2 and 1 are the last two. But I think Rogue One goes directly behind A New Hope in my list. I think it immediately goes 3rd on my list. It's certainly one of my favourite films of the year, if not my favourite. I'm trying to think of anything that beats it as a favourite. I'm not going to say it's the best film of the year, but it's definitely my favourite film of the year. So yeah, that's Rogue One. It's a great film. I'd probably, definitely 9 out of 10 at the very least, if I was going to give it like a 9, like out of a 10 thing. Definitely 9 out of 10 at the very, very least. Obviously Empire and New Hope are like 10 and 9.5-ish, so I would definitely put it 9 at the very least. I can't really consolidate it until I've watched it like 7 more times. I've seen it twice, I'm probably going to see it again. I could easily watch a Rogue One every single week, like at least once a week, and that's probably its biggest testament in my mind. So yeah, Rogue One, go watch it. I think Rogue One had Force Awakens had a massive burden to sort of get through. It had a lot of expectation on it from the fact it's a new Star Wars trilogy. I personally think Rogue One had even more to try and live up to, from the fact it was doing something different. It had something else. It had to achieve something different, as it were. Like Force Awakens had to live up to the originals. This had to live up to the originals and also be something different at the same time. So it sort of had two different expectations to try and live up to. And in my opinion, it lived up to both. It lived up to both of it. It was something different, but still really, really fits in with the original trilogy. It really lives up to it, and it's definitely on a quality on par of it. In my opinion, if any critic has like a big negative review of this, they're just doing it for the views. That's just my opinion. It's basically perfect, almost perfect. If the first part of it the first bit is a little bit clunky, like I said, but if it wasn't for that tiny bit of clunkiness in the first part of this, and maybe a little bit more to do with Krennic, I think this would have been absolutely perfect all the way through. But as it is, it's nearly perfect, and 9 out of 10 at the very least. So that's it from me. Merry Christmas to everyone. This will probably go up on Christmas Eve, so Merry Christmas to everyone, and I will see you in the new year. I'm going to be doing a sort of top 10 films or top 15 films of the 2016. So I will see you again for that, but for now I will see you again soon then. Ta-ra!